A couple of weeks ago, I had the absolute pleasure of finishing up season 1 of Severance. Now, I got on here and I talked about Severance. If you want to go watch that video, this is the thumbnail to look out. You just have to look for, a couple of videos before this one before we actually, dive into it. But this is the video where I talk about Severance Season 1. Go watch that video so that you can see all my thoughts on Season 1. Now, Season 2 of Severance has already finished, and I finally got to finish watching Severance. Now, I think that as much as most people have said the same thing, I do have to agree on one single point, and that is Season 2 may have not been as strong as Season 1, but it does fulfill the promise of its previous season. So obviously, since it's already come out entirely, I will be covering some spoilers in this video. So if you haven't watched Season 2, go over, watch Season 2, get all of the episodes in, absorb as much as you can, and then come back and we'll talk about it. But nonetheless, go watch the show. But if you have not, and you will not watch Severance, but you want to hear more about, what Season 2 of Severance was all about, and you really don't care about spoilers, please stick around because we got a few things to talk about. So after seeing Season 2 of Severance, let's talk about, in the overall sense, what I feel that the season kind of had a bit of a drawback on. Is that, honestly speaking, there were a few filler episodes. Well, I should say that there was probably maybe 2 filler episodes that didn't really add a whole lot to the story, but it kind of gave us little tiny glimpses into these characters' lives. You have an episode where we see Mark and we see, how his life has been. We also have moments where we talk about, his wife. So those moments alone are very interesting. I do understand that, seeing their life through a different lens, quite literally. I mean, we're seeing it as if it was shot in film format. It's very strange when you have a show that follows a specific format and then it completely breaks that format and you kind of feel some sort of warmth and connection to these characters. But at the same time, it is what it is, and the episode is essentially a filler episode. But I really do think that we got that as a filler episode, and we got also an episode toward the end where we see Mrs. Coble kind of essentially, have some sort of connection to her past. And then we find out that she is the creator of, Severance. She actually designed everything that has to do with Severance. So having that as well as an episode was interesting, but not necessary, to be honest. I feel like it kind of brings the show backwards rather than bringing the story forward. So I do agree that there are a few filler episodes, in Severance. A lot of people said, oh, there's no such thing as filler episodes when it comes to Severance. Well, you can say that about Season 1, but Season 2 has a few more, of these types of episodes. So, yeah, kind of sucks, but nonetheless, we go on. Now, something that I do appreciate, specifically in this season, is that they were able to fulfill the promise that the previous season set. So what was the promise in Season 1? The promise is that we will see Mark eventually find his wife. And because we find out that she's alive, and he kind of reveals it at the end of Season 1. So during Season 2, we see sort of the fallout of everything that happened in Season 1. We see like a new narrative being played out, which I think those are interesting touches that they added. The fact that now they're playing to these innies, that they started a revolution and that they made the company better by doing so. So it's kind of strange. Like, they did something that technically was wrong, but now they're being sort of revered for it. Really strange, but nonetheless, when we're dealing with Severance, most of those things are going to be strange either way. So, good setup on that part. And, from previous seasons, we understand little tidbits about each character that they dive into in season 2. So we see a whole lot more of Helena, or Helly. We know her innie as Helly R, but in fact it's Helena Egan. She is actually essentially the owner of the company. So we're seeing this play out really well in this sort of like, Audi sense, in the Audis sense. And really interesting to see her kind of, navigate this whole situation. She's very cold-hearted. Helena Egan on the outside is like really cold-hearted, not really like emotional or has any true interest in a character. On the flip side, Helly R is all emotion, all like care and wanting to, be there for her colleagues as well, Even though she has this rebellious state, she kind of learns from Mark in a way. I mean, let's be honest. She learns from Mark to be sort of like caring toward her, her colleagues and that sort of thing. So I feel like in that sense, Helly's story is better than Helena's story. I mean, everybody here is there to cheer on Helly and kind of like tell Helena to just like buzz off. And we kind of get that same sense now from Mark as well, because we see Mark go, and before I even get into anything, let's just say that final episode of season 2 was chef's kiss. Amazing. That final episode was amazing. Having him go rescue his wife, and then seeing the fact that he becomes from an innie to an outie, and him having to go and rescue her, and then leave that, and then go back. Really wild this entire situation is. So, really, like, I think that in that final episode, we see the innie kind of become a bit of a, for the lack of a better word, he's a bit of a dick. Like, he kind of shifts himself, because ultimately the innie kind of plays as a, how do I say this? It is a second consciousness that he has. So much so that he has this conversation with himself, at the cabin, For those of you who watch, you know what I'm talking about. But they go to the cabins where they have those women who are giving birth and that sort of thing. So in those cabins, he kind of speaks to himself with like a camcorder. Now, I don't understand why. My dad brought this up while we were watching, but I don't understand why they're using a camcorder when they live in a world where you can actually just pick up a phone and just record yourself. It's really strange. It's really strange that they would have that choice, but nonetheless, having that inner conversation, Mark with, Mark having that conversation, innie Mark with outie Mark having that conversation was a really brilliant move from the writers, from, I think Ben Stiller was also involved in this episode as well. So it's really interesting to see those inner dynamics play out with the outer dynamics and them having that conversation. So I would give them props for setting that up and then having us understand where each character, even though it's the same person, where each character stands. One wants their wife back. The other wants that relationship with Helly. And honestly, I'm very curious to see where this plays out in season 3, because obviously we already know that season 3 is in the works and they already announced it. So yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how that's going to play out later on. But I'm hopeful that we get something of a resolution in this case. But I'm still curious about the other storylines that we're going to see in season 3. And this is where I'm talking about how one season can fulfill the promise of the other. Just like season 1's promise that we would see, Mark's wife return to him and him rescuing her. The same promise that we got in season 1, season 2 delivered. Now, what was the promise in season 2 that we will see in season 3? Well, now we see a shift, a sort of flipping of the script when it comes to Mark and his situation. Previously, it was Mark saving his wife, but based on what we see on the final episode, now it's going to be his wife saving him. And that's going to be a very interesting concept that they're going to have to find a way of playing out in season 3. And if they are able to pull it off, it's going to be absolutely amazing. Now, there are situations in season 3 that I would like to see play out more. One of the situations we got in season 2 that I would like to see kind of expanded in season 3 was Dylan. Dylan's story in season 2 was kind of interesting. Kind of seeing how his wife reacts at home to him and his home life, and then trying to find a connection with him in his innie form at work. It's very strange because you kind of trying to find sort of the ethics of it all. Like, how exactly does this work? Like, would it be considered like assault if she was having a relationship or having some sort of intrapersonal relations with the innie without the outie knowing? Like, how would that work? Like, there's a lot of questions that arise from that very relationship dynamic that we see. It's a really strange love triangle because it's a wife that is sort of like going there and kissing her husband, but it's not technically her husband because he has no idea nor has any memories of what happens at home. And honestly, it's a really bizarre, mind-melding situation that it's just something that you have to kind of sit and process with. But I would love to see how they played that out in season 3 and how we might see a better version of Dylan in season 3. Now, a sad thing as well that happens in season 3 that I was kind of like shocked about was that Irving gets fired. But he gets fired for doing something that nobody else was capable of doing, was that he was able to recognize when Helly wasn't there. And in fact, it was somebody else. It was Helena Egan. It was the outie that was having that experience in the office with everybody. And she was trying to like fool everybody into thinking what she saw and what was happening. So when we see that, scene with them in the room discussing like, hey, what did you see on the outside? And Helly kind of makes up a BS answer. At first, I thought it was Helly just trying to like lie so that she could keep that information to herself. Only till later do we find out that it was actually Helena that was having that experience and kind of like trying to understand everybody else's situation. So Irving leaving kind of creates a really strange dynamic because after he leaves, we find out that Bert starts to create a connection with him on the outside, even though that Irving and Bert officially don't know each other on the outside. They know each other on the inside. But when it comes to the outside, we kind of see this sort of relationship flourish with Irving and Bert. And Irving, obviously wanting to have a love of his own, does everything in his power to still stay with Bert, even though he has no memory or recollection of the relationship that they had at work. So it's a really interesting dynamic that they're playing with. And hopefully we get to see Irving in season 2. I should say season 3, rather, because season 2 he gets fired. So hopefully we get to see him in season 3. And I'm hopeful that we get to see a very interesting storyline play with him on the outside. Whether it's helping take down, literally take down Lumon. So we'll see. I mean, he's an operative. He understands, things and how they work on the inside. At least that is what we understand from the papers that are found in his house. So hopefully some magic happens and we get a really interesting arc for Irving. So one really funny little addition that they added to this show in season 2 that I think most people would probably find pretty funny is Miss Huang, which is played by Sarah Bach, which on the show she looks like she's like 8 or 9, but in real life she's 18. She just looks younger than she actually is. But I think that was a funny addition to get a kid on the show to kind of play as sort of like a boss of some kind. Really interesting concept that they're playing with. To have this, kid who's observant and kind of, play as like Milchick's second hand. It's weird to think about, but to play as Milchick's second hand in the situation is kind of wild. And I think it was brilliant. I think it was a brilliant choice because it's kind of a juxtaposition of the fact that you're getting someone who's much younger to like boss around these people. So it's kind of funny to see her, be like, okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. So yeah, it's really funny to see, Miss Huang in this situation. So a nice little surprise that we got this season that I really, really enjoyed seeing in this season. Someone who plays a badass stormtrooper, aka Captain Phasma herself, Gwendolyn Christie, was part of this season. I absolutely love seeing her here. She's, sort of like this caretaker for the goats, and like we find out that there's like this whole group of people who take care of the goats. We still don't understand what the goats are about. We don't know if they're just, sacrificial lambs. I mean, I don't know what they are, but they play a really interesting role in sort of how they operate. At least I'm very interested in finding out more about why they have these goats around. Hopefully they discuss that in season 3, but having Gwendolyn Christie take care of these goats is a really interesting kind of concept that I had a lot of fun with. And ultimately, she kind of saves Mark in the end. So really cool. Really, really, really cool to see her here. So what do I think season 3 is going to be about? And I feel like the best way to find out what season 3 is going to be like is just by seeing season 2. And season 2 ends off with 2 very interesting events. Obviously, we see, Mark running with Helly through the hallways, and we expect that they're going to have some sort of connection there and how they're going to get out of this situation. I sincerely don't know. I don't know how Mark is going to be penalized in that sort of situation, or if Helly is, going to be acting different from now on, or maybe Helena is going to be kind of butting her way into the situation. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see that specific dynamic play out, in season 3. But the second situation that also happens in the final episode that I really would like to see in season 3 expanded upon is the fact that when we see Mark's wife, she is officially severed, but she has multiple personalities, which to me, it kind of blows my mind that you could have multiple personalities having one person who is severed, which means you could essentially have multiple people in a single place having a sort of completely different experience regardless of where you're working. So let's say, Mark, we know that Mark works on the severed level, but we don't know where else he works. Like, think of that concept for a second. Like, what if all the people that we see that are severed have also other levels that they work on? That would be mind-blowing, wouldn't it be? Like, imagine an entire episode that takes place in a completely different floor to the one that they work at. And in fact, they're working a completely different job on a different level. How about like different types of workers working multiple levels and never having to leave? Like, just think about this for a second. What if you had one individual who is completely severed from the outside? Completely severed, meaning you completely delete all of their memory from the outside. But now they are going to fully live and work inside that building at Lumon. And at each floor, they're going to be a different type of person. Meaning you could have people working 24 hours a day, non-stop, and that person would never know about it. They would never know. They would probably have like maybe 1 or 2 hours to themselves and then go back to work and work another 22 hours. Like, that is a concept in and of itself that you could make all of season 3 about. How corporations could get in on this. How they're going to sell the Severance system to other people. How you could militarize the Severance system. Imagine if you had a soldier which you could switch on. He becomes a soldier, shoots, kills a bunch of people. Then when he comes back, you can turn him off from the Severance, and he can just be a regular human being. Like, imagine eliminating PTSD as a whole. Like, all of these different things is wild. Like, imagine how many different situations you can create just on the concept alone that was presented at the end of this season. It's so much stuff that you can think about that it'll just blow your mind. But needless to say, this would be an absolutely amazing opportunity to dive into these sorts of stories in season 3. And all in all, I think season 2 was really well done. A great season. Not as strong as season 1. If it weren't so much for those little filler episodes, it would have been better. But because of those filler episodes, it kind of like drops in sort of like excitement for me. A little bit. Not a lot. A little bit. But I still think Severance Season 2 was really well made. Great cinematography. Like, all in all, a banger. That's all I can say. It was a banger of a season. Final episode was fantastic. Over an hour long. I mean, deservingly so. It was really great. And I can't wait to see season 3. Now, I say this to everybody that watches my videos. I just give out my opinions on what I think of shows, TV, music, movies, whatever in the media hemisphere. But I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you guys think. Do you guys think that this show is doing great? Do you think season 2 is better than season 1? Do you think, like me, that season 1 was better than season 2? I'd like to know your thoughts. I would love to hear what you guys think about Season 2 of Severance down below. And if you're already down there, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified when new videos go live on this channel. And thank you so much for watching this video. And I'll see you in the next video.
Scrolling through YouTube, same old routine, then bam, movie savant, what a scene. Trivia bombshells dropping knowledge like rain. Forget the dishes, gotta watch it again. Movie buffs unite, savants to place. Subscribe and hit the bell, don't leave a trace. Next level knowledge keeps you in the loop. Savants got the scoop, ain't nothing to recoup.